Okay, so our presentation today is by Seth Friedman. He is the CEO of Passage Home that deals with breaking the cycle of poverty. Seth has a master's degree in public administration, and he's worked in the nonprofit sector since he graduated from ECU in 2004. As I said, he is the chief executive officer of Passage Home, and this is Passage Home is an anti-poverty agency serving families in poverty and veterans. And I was on their website yesterday and they're full up. So there's a huge need for this. Um, so without further ado, Seth, you may have control of the screen.
I
Welcome.
appreciate it. I'm actually not going to be presenting any slides today. I'm just going to be talking. And what I'm going to be talking about this morning is obviously the work of Passage Home, but why it is so important and the mistakes we make as a society, especially for our young adults and or just adults in general that we see living in poverty. As an American society, and I don't think it's unique to American, but I think as most societies, we suffer a lot of the times from something called recency bias, right? Meaning that the way we see things today assumes that the way we think they always are. So I always use our community, the community that we're headquartered in, Passage Home is headquartered in South Park, Raleigh, as a great example. So South Park, Raleigh, everybody here know where South Park is? So South Park is right across the street from Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in downtown Raleigh. So when you go to Raleigh and you're looking for a nice house and you want to go downtown, everybody tells you goes downtown as far as Martin Luther King Boulevard, but don't cross over Martin Luther King Boulevard. Every town in the country has a street like that. For a long time, that has been Raleigh's. I'm sure Nightdale has communities like that as well. And so for the past 40 or 50 years, South Park, Raleigh has been really the concentration of poverty in Raleigh, more or less in Wake County. And I know as you go east, there's a lot of poverty in Wake County, but just a concentration is in South Park. And so when you walk into South Park, you assume this is how it always is. This is how it always was. And it is an area of high crime, or has been an area of high crime, high poverty, bad educational outcomes, higher death rates, so on and so forth. But the problem is with recency bias, what people don't understand is South Park itself is one of the first planned Black communities in America. For over 150 years, it was a middle-class community, right? But as America went through its 1960s and 1970s urban renewal, a lot of communities, including Raleigh, decided to bulldoze through Black communities to not upset white communities. And so what happened is they bulldozed through a middle-class neighborhood. This neighborhood was connected to Shaw University, was connected to St. Augustine's, was connected to a lot of churches, and was a really well-to-do neighborhood. And so the Black families that were able to move out did. And what was left behind was an area of concentrated poverty and blight because they destroyed the neighborhood and they didn't rebuild it. Again, this story is not unique to South Park, Raleigh. It happened everywhere between the combination of white flight and urban renewal in the 60s and 70s. It really destroyed a lot of Black neighborhoods and created the areas of concentrated poverty we saw for the last 40 and 50 years in many metropolitan areas. So as we as society went into these communities, we just kind of tick the box like, that's just a bad community. That's, there's nothing, it's just a bad community. And when the truth is, it was built to be a bad community by the larger society. And so the recency bias is we saw it, assumed it always was this way. And it was like, well, there was nothing we could have done about it. The truth is we created it. And so I want to use that example. And again, that example could be used in New York City, in San Francisco, in Detroit, in Houston, everywhere across America. But I want to use a similar story when it comes to the work we're doing. And at the end of my stories, I'll really get into how Passage Home is trying to fight against this. So a lot of the work we do is to combat multi-generational poverty, or what another term that is kind of interchangeable but not exact is called the cycle of poverty. Has everybody here heard of the term the cycle of poverty? But most people just kind of think it's just a cycle. You kind of go in, you never come out. But what I'm going to talk about is kind of the recency bias for when we say, I'm just going to pick a 25-year-old man on the corner of a street begging for money, and where a lot of our thought processes go. We see this man or woman, and we just assume they've made a lot of bad choices, made a lot of bad mistakes. You know, some of us think they're unsavable, some of us think they're savable, but we put the blame on them. What did they do to be in this situation? How did they mess up along the way? So I want to start the story. When you picture this 25-year-old person, man or woman, there's a lot of intersectionality between poverty and people of color, and how being a person of color leads to poverty. And I'm going to talk about that somewhat, but not exclusively. But I just want you also keep that in the back of your mind. So 25-year-old man, we're going to go back to before they were born. They're in their mother's womb. If they are a person of color, their mother is 1/3 or 3 times more likely to die in childbirth than their white counterparts. This is in America. I'm just talking about America. America has the worst birth rate disparities between Black women and white women. And now, while there is, unfortunately, a higher percentage of individuals of color who live in poverty, that doesn't hold true when it comes to the birth rates. So a Black woman with a college degree has even a greater percent chance of dying in comparison to a white woman of a college degree, and still a greater chance a Black woman of color dying in childbirth than a white woman with no college degree. So it's not poverty that's causing that. So now we go back to this 25-year-old kid. They are 3 times more likely to be raised without a mother, without their biological mother, or without a female parental figure at the time. And then we have to go back to why are Black women dying at a higher rate. And there's been many studies, and the most widely accepted and believed study is because American society is a toxic stress for women of color throughout their life, and the stress leads to higher death rates. And you know, they looked at this across Europe, across other Western countries, and other quote unquote first world countries, and we are the one with the worst disparity. So now this soon to be 25-year-old born 3 times more likely to be born to a mother who has recently passed away. And now this baby becomes 3 years old, they're raised. Does anybody want to guess? I know I have to ask anybody to unmute. How many words a 3-year-old living in poverty hears less than a 3-year over the course of their lifetime between 0 and 3? How many words they hear less than a more affluent counterpart? Does anybody want to take a guess?
Is it Seth, this is Matt. Is it 1,000? I think
1,000. Go up, go higher. Anybody? All right, I know I don't have to. So 30 million less words.
Whoa.
Between birth and 3 years old for a person living in poverty. Nothing to do with color. This has to do with poverty. And there could be many reasons for this. There's been many studies. The best, again, the most widely accepted is parents living in poverty have to work multiple jobs, so can't spend time with their kids. Parents living in poverty are dealing with a constant stress, so don't have time. When I go, I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. I still try to read to them every night, but it doesn't happen every night. The nights it doesn't happen is because I'm too tired. I'm too stressed. And I'm just like, all right, guys, go to bed, read a book by yourselves or watch a TV show. And you know, I have the luxury of not dealing with that toxic stress. So 30 million less words by the time they're 3 years old. And all of us learn auditorily at those ages. So they're really far behind. I can keep going on through some more statistics, but now I'm going to skip to 8th grade. This 25-year-old kid is 8th grade, 9th grade. And again, I'm going to intersect between poverty and people of color here. But does anybody know the high school graduation rate across America? High school graduation rate. Anybody want to take a guess?
75%.
On the nose, 75%, which still, blows my mind. If 10 years ago someone asked me, I would say 90%, 95%. So 1 in 4 kids does not graduate college. I'm sorry, does not graduate high school. Only 33% graduate college. And so 1 in 4 doesn't graduate high school. The biggest indicator of whether you graduate high school is if you have been suspended 1 time in high school. If you get suspended 1 time, your chance of graduating high school decreases by 14%. 1 time, 1 mistake. If you if you get suspended 2 times, your chance of graduating high school drops all the way to 50%. Does anybody want to guess what is the most likely demographic to get suspended in high school? Men of color. And so now we're kind of seeing this all add up, but I did skip a step. So that 3-year-old heard 30 million less words, progressing through school, living in areas of concentrated poverty, living in areas like South Park 10, 15 years ago. They are growing up with what's called ACEs. Does anybody know what ACEs means? ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So these could be things as simple as divorce, as common as divorce, not simple, because divorce is never simple. As common as divorce, poverty is an ACE, abuse, witnessing violence, hunger, lack of health care, all things that are kind of common in areas of concentrated poverty. The more ACEs that a child sees or suffers from, the more likely they are to have stunted development. Stunted development that can result in lack of concentration, violent outbursts, lack of cognitive development, all things that could be considered or can lead to a diagnosed disability. A lot of the times ADHD. And a lot of times this manifests itself like PTSD. So we go back to the mother who died in childbirth because of the toxic stress. This is a toxic stress. They live in a community surrounded by PTSD because of the environments they grew up in. And so if this 3-year-old goes to school, gets diagnosed with disability because they're behind in reading, they are now going to that 9th grade, we start talking about suspensions. So individuals of color are more likely to be suspended. Men are more likely to be suspended. Individuals with a diagnosed disability are more likely to be suspended. So now if you're a Black man with a diagnosed disability, like the chance of you being suspended are increased by that much. And up to now, I've really only talked about one single lifespan of poverty, right? Like how poverty has impacted the mother and this one child. And I haven't even started to talk about systemic racism and institutional racism. But now you bring in school resource officers, which has been a topic on and off for the past 15, 20 years. But essentially, that's a police officer in the schools. Obviously, it's been brought more wide attention over the past year or so, but communities of color and the police have not had the greatest relationship. Police school resource officers, despite being 14% of the community, African American and Black, they make up over 50% of suspensions within America. And again, a lot of that is that. I think that was an accident, so I'll keep going. A lot of that, the school resource officers, create additional tension, and again, are targeting Black males more than any other demographic. And there's a term that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but the prison to pipeline, the school to prison pipeline. Where a lot of us, when we were in high school, we got in a fight. We got suspended, we got kicked out for a couple of days, whatever it may be. A lot of these kids, especially again, communities of color, end up in jail. So now you're a high school student suspended in jail. What's the next step? So they don't graduate high school or they do graduate high school with all this weighing on them. How, are they going to college? Probably not. Are they getting a GED if they didn't graduate high school? Hopefully, if the right person comes into their life. But post high school, without a high school degree, coming from poverty, if you come from poverty in Raleigh, you're lucky because you have a lot of jobs in your area, but you move this person out to Wendell. No high school degree, no transportation, very little job outlook. So now you're kind of putting things together between when you were supposed to graduate high school and as an adult. Now this is the person we see on the corner of the street asking for money, or outside of our food line asking for money. And then again, we look at them and say, what did they do wrong to get here? And as a society, we need to look at ourselves and say, what did we do as a society to push them here? Like if you looked at the person from birth and they went through everything I just described, and I just went, I skipped years and years and years of their life, how would we expect this person to be successful? How would we say, good luck? So we see this 25-year-old, and one of the most common cliches we hear is, why can't they just pick themselves up by the bootstraps? Because we never gave them shoelaces. We never gave them the basics they needed to succeed. And so what the cycle comes in is, let's say that 25-year-old now has a child. That 25-year-old now has a baby. That baby's going to grow up in poverty, food insecure, difficult access to healthcare, hearing 30 million less words. And that's the cycle. That's the cycle we have to break. And what Passage Home is doing, so Passage Home is Wake County's anti-poverty organization. We take a multi-generational approach. So that means we work with both the parent and the child, or the child and the parent, whoever gets introduced to us first. And we look to create foundational change. And we do that first and foremost by looking to provide permanent, stable, safe housing. We own and operate 100 units of affordable housing. We have an affinity a cohort group of landlords throughout the county that provides 200 additional units. We're about to break ground on 200 units of affordable housing right in South Park. But permanent supportive housing is so important. I'm going to use an analogy here. Housing is a basic need, right? None of us could survive without our basic needs, without shelter. Who here, skipped a meal in the last couple of weeks? Skip breakfast. Let's say, who here skipped breakfast by choice in the last couple of weeks? Anybody? All right, Jeff, you raised your hand. By the time, if you had a 12 o'clock Zoom, you haven't had a chance to eat. By 12 o'clock, you have a Zoom meeting from 12 to 1. What are you focused on during that meeting?
The clock.
Oh, why?
Because as soon as the Zoom meeting's over, I get to go eat.
That's right. You're not fully focused on what you're doing, so you're focused on your basic need of hunger. We all did that in high school. We skipped breakfast. By the time math class rolled around, the period before lunch, you forgot everything in that math class because you were just thinking about what you were eating. Now imagine that's your life. Now I'm using food because it's a basic need, just like shelter. Imagine your entire life you're going through it. Where am I sleeping at night? Am I safe? Is my child safe? That's what's constantly running in your mind. How are you supposed to do good in college, do well in college? How are you supposed to advance your career, to learn a new trade? Because you're constantly focused on this basic need. You can't create long-term goals because you're always looking towards what the immediate need is. And I know I use food, but with lack of shelter comes food insecurity, comes a lot of other basic needs. So we look to create permanent, supportive, safe, stable housing because we feel that this gives that person and that family the foundation. Right? They can take that stressor out of their mind. They can now go to a job training class. They can now go to work and ask their boss, what can I do better? They can now look for other areas and create long-term goals that they can set and then hopefully succeed in. And this goes for both the adult and the child, because if you're a child living in housing insecure areas, you go live with your uncle, you go live with your aunt, may or may not be abusive. You may have older cousins that aren't the best influences. So as a child going to school, housing insecure, you're constantly dealing with these stressors. So we create, we build, we maintain, we help clients stay in long-term affordable housing. Through calendar year 2020, which we all know was the majority, was through a worldwide pandemic, we spent $1.6 million in direct rent and utility payments to make sure our family stayed in permanent housing. And it was doubly important during the pandemic, because obviously during a communicable disease, families become transient. They're more likely either to contract or pass along a deadly virus. So it's really important that we spent a lot more time and focus on helping families stay stabilized. And the second area of our work is economic mobility or job training, where once we get them stabilized, stabilization is always first. We work to increase their employable skills through concrete certificate earning job training programs. They're from things, items or jobs as simple, not simple, but as common as hotel guest services, culinary arts. Now we started training individuals on phlebotomy, EKG technicians, HVAC, CDL or commercial driver's license. And these are important, and especially the last ones, because they're all living wage jobs. And to us, a living wage is $15 an hour with benefits. 15, does anybody want to take a guess? And I know I've been quizzing you. If minimum wage in America is still $7.25, if you worked 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year at $7.25, do you want to guess what your take home, your gross pay is after 1 year? David, I see you speaking, but you're on mute.
Less than 15,000.
Yeah, like right at $15,000. And we say minimum wage, no, that's good. You can survive at $15,000. And that's the federal minimum wage. Hawaii and Alaska are different, but can you imagine trying to survive on $15,000 in Raleigh, in San Francisco, in New York? I can't imagine, if me and my wife both made $7.25 an hour, worked full time, how we would raise 2 kids on $30,000 a year in the triangle. And so that's why we believe $30,000 for an individual is what is the minimum requirement for living wage work. And so we help train these individuals, and our workforce training or our economic mobility work is the one that took the biggest hit during the pandemic. Obviously, we couldn't hold in-person classes and still aren't, but what we did, what we're really excited about, and this is my pitch moment, I guess, is we created what is a workforce development portal. Nothing in and of itself within it is unique, but the fact is the clients we're serving within the portal have not had access to a platform like this. So what our portal does is we have content providers like Wake Tech, Ed2Go, ProTrain, who all train individuals in certificate earning job classes, again, like the ones I mentioned before. They access them live, online, or learn at your own pace. And learn at your own pace is very important for our client base, because when we held in-person classes from, let's say, 9 to 1, Monday through Friday, to attend our class, they would have to make sacrifices of maybe that minimum wage job in hopes of making more work. They'd have to sacrifice childcare, transportation. They'd have to sacrifice costs. With learn at your own pace, they can learn, they can come home from work and learn, they can learn next to their child. Less sacrifices have to be made. But what makes this portal unique is this is an online portal with access to our case managers to support them throughout the class, access to volunteers, and what we're calling our volunteers is accountability coaches. I know Weight Watchers has a similar kind of program where they connect you with your mentor is kind of accountability coach, like how many points do you eat today? And so we want to kind of have these accountability coaches, like, hey, I saw you only finished 2 portals so far. You got to you have to get through the 3rd to complete the class. What can I do to help? And so they'll have access to all of this directly online, just through chat, through video conference, through email, all in one place. And then the employers will be on that same portal. The employers can then search through Passage Home's client list, not names, just by a certificate. So if I'm a truck driving company, I'm looking for someone who just earned their CDL license. I can click the filter button and the names will pop up. They can contact them directly, and vice versa, where our clients can then directly work with our group of employers that we've recruited. And so we think that this is very exciting. It's about to launch. We expect it to launch by the end of Q1 2021. We think, again, not unique, not too different than the University of Phoenix, but University of Phoenix is not meant for our clients. This is a portal, and we are going to be providing laptops, hotspots. For those that don't know, Wake Tech, every one of Wake Tech parking lots are drive-up hotspots. So you can drive up and connect to Wi-Fi from the comfort of your car. All of our programs will be cell phone accessible. And so we're really trying to push through the digital divide as well. And then while, again, a lot of the programs I talked about spoke about the adult, but we're always working with the kid at the same time. We work with the kids, really, it's really a referral program, but we assess the children, get to know their needs. So I talked about that child at 3 years old, at 8 years old, the 8th grade. We work with all those age groups. We assess them, say, what is the need that's not being met for them? And we connect them to that community resource. A lot of times they can't get into a food bank without the referral. We're that referral. They can't get into a mental health program or don't know which mental health program to go to. We are that referral. And that's how we look to break that cycle by creating that stability for the entire family. Second, creating the economic mobility. Third, by supporting the child along the way. And I briefly mentioned it, but we do build affordable housing. We are about to break ground on 200 units of affordable housing. We have plans for another 100 units in Raleigh, but we look to build throughout the county. We are county-wide. We work with a lot of clients from Knightdale. I know one of the things Knightdale is not plentiful of is public land or publicly owned land at this point. But we're always looking for affordable housing opportunities. We're looking for landlords willing to work with our clients. And when you work with Passage Home clients, you do get the additional security of knowing that we will pay a few months rent and a few months in advance while our clients stabilize. So that is my 25 minutes. Happy to yield the rest of my time for questions.
Seth, I know there are other organizations in Wake County that I'm going to loosely say handle similar clients. They're not exactly like yours, but Raleigh Rescue Mission works with, you know. Do you guys coordinate? Is there a coordinating center that helps all of these agencies work together?
Yeah, yes and no is the answer to that. So there is a big coordinated entry. It's called the Partnership to End Homelessness. It's a Wake County-led organization. And that coordinates only through certain programs where we all get HUD funding or Housing and Urban Development funding that all go through that program. Raleigh Rescue, and we do collaborate with really, if you know a nonprofit working in the job training field or the housing field, we collaborate with them in one way or another. Raleigh Rescue Mission actually came to us for their model. So they built their model directly off of Passage Home. So we all work together because we're all working with similar clients. A lot of the times, you know, unfortunately, our clients jump from one program to the other, whichever best fits their needs. But we do try to communicate through different collaboratives and cohorts, and we know in Knightdale. And so the Partnership to End Homelessness, what it does, essentially in the past, if you were homeless or on the precipice of homelessness, you would have to walk or go or call to Passage Home and hope we had availability. However, if you would have, and we don't, if you would have just happened to call Raleigh Rescue Mission instead of Passage Home that day, you would have got a house. But since you called Passage Home, you didn't. So what the Partnership to End Homeless does is kind of take that luck out of it, and they have a center. So they call the center. The Partnership to End Homelessness evaluates the person based on the severity of their situation, right? So if I'm actively living in a car, my situation is more severe than someone who is living with their mother or living with their sister. And so they will be prioritized at the top of the list and then get sent out to whatever organization has openings. Obviously, as I'm sure you guys can all tell, that has its benefits and its drawbacks. So someone living in Apex who is homeless and gets prioritized might get sent to an agency in Knightdale or a program out in Knightdale, and they might not have the transportation or might not have the familial support out there. And also, you know, we as the agencies can't act as quickly because we're waiting for the referral before we can have somebody.
we are going through a strategic planning process for the club where we're trying to figure out how we can best focus our service efforts. Is there a way we could tap into your client base that's specific to Nightdale while, you know, obviously there are needs throughout the county? Is there any way that we can say, okay, we want to serve our local community. How can we do it with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way would be through that volunteer or through the workforce portal that I just described. You know, we can make sure that any client that comes out of Nightdale, we ping the Rotary first and say, hey, we have this new client. They're just joining our HVAC training. Is there anybody that would like to mentor them out of Nightdale?
Okay.
Seth, where does your funding come from?
So we have several funding sources. The biggest one is federal or public funding through federal, state, and county grants. We are the Community Action Agency of Wake County, the designated anti-poverty agency. All of our public grants make up about 60% of our total funding. About 20% comes from rental revenue, and the other 20% comes from private foundations and donors.
Anyone else have
Hey,
questions?
Seth, I have a quick question.
Hey, Jessica.
Hey, good to see you. Thank you so much for coming and speaking to our group and sharing more about Passage Home. I wanted to know if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit more about what you
You
Jessica,
cut out, Jessica,
I-
when you said what?
Jessica, I muted you because there was feedback and I muted the wrong thing, I think. So thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm joined in twice. So I'm speaking on one and you see me on the other, but can you hear me now? Okay. I was just asking if you didn't mind sharing a little bit of what you've seen over this past year. I know this has been a difficult year. And then going into this is the beginning of 2021. So just sharing with the group how you've coordinated with others more and what you've seen.
Yeah. So I think, you know, from our perspective, obviously we're a very unique perspective with the focus on housing, especially during the pandemic. It's still up in the air what we're going to see. I think that all the housing, the eviction moratoriums, the additional funding. So we received a lot of additional funding to help families stay housed during the pandemic, which was obviously very needed. But I think my gut is that we're kicking the can down the road. There's going to be a housing crisis that comes out of the pandemic that we haven't seen yet. So like I said, we spent $1.6 million helping families stay housed. While there has been an eviction moratorium, there's never been rental forgiveness. So for those that were lucky enough to get paid for by an organization like Passage Home, we could pay a couple months. As everybody knows, the pandemic's been going on for 10 now. So if they haven't worked in 10 months and Passage Home, let's say, paid 6 of those months, they still owe 4 months. And so for our clients, let's say they have a great deal and are paying $500 a month for an affordable housing unit somewhere, they still owe $2,000. They have to find that $2,000 somewhere. And that's gonna be difficult for a lot of our clients. And you know, if you're living in an average Wake County apartment, a 2 bedrooms, $1,200. And so a couple months that really adds up. So we think there's going to be a housing crisis somewhere down the road. I know President-elect Biden is going to sign a continued eviction moratorium today, which is great and much needed. But you know, there's always the other side of it. And the other side of it is for organizations like us that are trying to find families permanent housing, the turnover of housing hasn't been as much. So we're having a much more difficult time finding new affordable housing units because they're not becoming available. And then the other side of it is specific to the pandemic. You know, in the past, it was our task to move families out of hotels and into permanent housing. But with shelters closing, all mass sheltering programs closing during the pandemic, and rightfully so, we then helped families stay in hotels. So we spent a lot of our resources, our financial resources, making sure families were housed in, quote unquote, individual housing during the pandemic. And for our clients specifically, with the economic downturn, the hardest hit industries were the service industry, and that's where the majority of our clients worked. And so I think the unemployment rate is somewhere around 7 or 8% around the nation, but that's disproportionately covers individuals who were living close to or near the federal poverty level, and individuals making $50,000 a year or less, which is primarily our clients.
Hey Seth, this is Matt Strickland. Curious when you are building affordable housing or for Passage Home, are y'all partnering with organizations like DHIC to help build and manage that, or are y'all doing all that work on your own and doing all the construction development and then managing it yourself? How do y'all take care of that? Because it's amazing. I appreciate all that you're doing. It's a lot of work,
So it's, again, like most of my answers, there's many layers to it. So we own some, small apartment complexes. The biggest one we own now is 18 units. And that we manage completely on our own. We have some individual housing units, single family housing that we all manage. However, we are about to create what's called a LIHTC project, a low income housing tax credit project. These are much bigger projects that get federal subsidies to essentially make them paper, so we're not losing money on the deal. And with that money comes a lot of oversight, rightfully so. And so we legally can't manage that for 2 years. We'd have to have an outside agency come in and manage that for 2 years. Hopefully, the goal is while we get the experience credits necessary to manage our next project. So we don't partner directly with DHIC. We look to partner with DHIC. DHIC is really the big nonprofit affordable housing developer in the area. And we just had a conversation with them a few weeks ago, and they're just overwhelmed themselves. And so they don't have the capacity, but we are partnering with other agencies, not necessarily nonprofits, but to get us the experience necessary so we can in the future manage them ourselves.
So how many clients are you serving at this point, about?
So on a typical year, we're about 300 families. This year, it's going to be 1,000 families, and I'm sorry, when I say this year, our fiscal year is July 1 through June 30th. So over that time period, it'll be about 1,000 families.
This is much more comprehensive, I guess, than I appreciated when I booked you. So I'm glad that you came on board. We have a sister club that is a kind of a subset of this Knightdale club. It's called the Rotary Club for Social Justice. And the members of that club are beyond just Knightdale. They go through Durham and into Raleigh. I may try to book you for that as well. We're booked through most of the spring, but if you have time, I think that group would be particularly interested in what you have to say. And perhaps both clubs can do something to support your efforts. Anyone else have anything? I'm going to try to share my screen again if I can find what I'm looking for. So I know this is not much, Seth, but we're going to send you a little certificate of appreciation for your great presentation today. We thank you very much for your time and explaining to us what you're doing. And the time is right because, as I said, we're trying to figure out what this club is going to do going forward. So this information is, as I said, timely.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Yes, virtual round of applause, please. And I think that is it. So you may stay or leave, Seth, depending on your time commitments today. All right.
Thank you again, everybody.
Thanks so much, Seth.
Thank you.
All right, Doris.
Yes. Do we have any guests besides Seth? I don't.
Marissa D, I don't recognize.
Hi, good morning.
So tell us who you are, Marissa.
I recently moved to the Knightdale area from North Raleigh, and I have one of my very good friends and I decided that we were going to participate in the Rotary Club just as an opportunity to give ourselves a little bit more stake in the community. So we've been trying to tune in for a couple of weeks, but with the holidays, I know there were some meetings canceled. So here I am.
Well, welcome. We're delighted to have you.
Welcome,
Thank you.
Marissa.
Thank you, guys. Happy to be here.
So how in the world did you find out about Rotary?
I have a family that are members of other Rotary groups internationally and in other states. So I just figured I would Google it. And then I think I found your Facebook page and used that to kind of do some research, got the link for the Zoom and the newsletter link. And I kind of just have it on my calendar recurring every week and hoping that I would be able to join in one day.
Yay. Well, you're certainly welcome. And if you would send in chat to me or to Matt, either one of us, your email address and telephone number, we'll get you on our official mailing list. So, you'll perhaps get another email, a newsletter along the way. But
Okay.
yeah, great to have you. And so just out of curiosity, you said other countries and other states. So what country do you have people in Rotary?
My cousin in St. Thomas is a member of the Rotary Club there. And I mean, she has been, for most of her adult life. And so, I mean, she's very, very involved in it. And we spoke about it at one of our family reunions. And, it's just one of those things. I volunteered in other capacities, but just wanting to get connected to something here in my area.
So Marissa, you did say St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands?
Yes, sir.
I have made a presentation to that Rotary Club by Zoom.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a small world.
Right. That's awesome. Do you know when it was? Because I'm going to ask her.
Sometime last fall. I'm guessing August, September timeframe.
Okay.
Maybe October.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I think she's on the if there's an executive team or board or something. So she should definitely remember you. That's phenomenal.
Rotary is a small world, and it's so great to have people that were brought up, if you will, in Rotary and have this multi-generational exposure to the good stuff we can do. That's very cool. So welcome.
Thank you.
And Marie, you should point out that next week we meet at a different time.
Oh yeah, thank you. Actually, it's probably coming up. Let me just advance the slides. We'll go back to what's sharing the good. We have the Strategic Planning Committee meeting tomorrow night, and I'm going to be sending out some stuff to you guys for some pre-study. I had an aha moment last night. I'm going to try to put it on paper so we can you can look at it before we talk about it. We are the sponsor next Wednesday morning for the Economic Forum. By sponsor, I mean we're simply providing the Zoom platform. Jessica, I forgot, do we have to register for that? I didn't pay much attention.
Yes, and I don't know, you might want to ask Kristen if we could do something special for Rotary. There is I think it's $10 to attend.
It is.
So, okay.
So can you send the link for the registration?
Yes,
Or do you know where to find it?
I think I do have that invitation, and I can send that.
I'd appreciate it if you would.
I think it was in the Facebook notice. Excuse me.
I'm not on Facebook.
You need to be.
No.
Marie, do you have that invitation?
If I do, Jess, I will look, but honestly, I've been getting so many emails lately. It probably went in one eye and out the other. I'll see if we can find it and share it, but that was a worthwhile presentation. In any case, we will be on that Wednesday next week. And then our meeting, Marissa, the last meeting of every month right now is at noon. And we're going to have an update from the town of Nightdale town manager. So that is as a new resident of the town, that should be an interesting presentation for you as well as all of us, of course. And then something that all of you, just a second, Jeff, all of you can help me or us with, and all of us, except, well, most of us are on the strategic planning committee. So sharing it with Doris would be fine, or me, is who do you think we should have involved to assess our community needs? As we go through the strategic planning process, we want to make sure that we're focusing our efforts in the most meaningful way. So rather than just talking to ourselves, we should bring in other experts. I'm thinking people that are dealing with homelessness, food insecurity, literacy, probably a white church, probably a black church, probably, you know, whatever, people that touch the community in different ways. We need to be involved in the assessment process. So if you know somebody that we should tap to talk to, let us know. Jeff.
Yeah, so I go back one slide real quick to where you were on the economic forum. I think I saw that starts at 7:30.
Yeah,
That's usually when it starts, yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting the call at 7:15, but yeah, it's officially at 7:30.
So I just didn't want us to lose anybody coming on at 7 o'clock and not being able to get into the Zoom meeting. And then, you understand? I just wanted to make sure.
The Zoom credentials are different. It's not our club credentialing.
Okay.
So I guess you'll have to go through the registration process. So yeah, I guess I really need to figure out that registration process. Okay, Doris.
I'm gonna start from the bottom and go up. Todd, you're first.
I'm just happy to be busy at work.
Okay, and Marissa?
I'm just happy. I mean, not just, I'm actually exceptionally happy about my first home. I'm getting set up, and, you know, I just looking forward to being a part of the active community here.
Great.
And Matt?
Sorry, I couldn't find the mute button. Just happy to be here this morning, y'all. It was a struggle to get here at 7, so I'm happy to see y'all as always, and thanks for letting me join.
Awesome. And Jessica?
Yes, so I would say I am happy and a little bit sad at the same time because our great mayor has been voted in a new position. So he will now be our representative, and he is moving to the House of Representatives. Darren Jackson, who was our representative, is now in the Court of Appeals. So it has been some exciting shifts and things happening for people in this area, and especially for our mayor. He's amazing. He's done an amazing job here in Nightdale, and I know he's going to carry that on and fight for us and do well in the representative position. And we do have our council meeting this evening, and we will be making decisions on the new mayor. So a lot of changes, a lot of things happening. I can give an update in our next meeting, but happy for the mayor this morning.
Awesome.
And Seth?
I'm still here. Sorry, I got to get my. Good morning. Happy I got to present today. Today is our first staff meeting at Passage Home for 2021 on an important day as a society. So I'm really excited to kind of lead Passage Home into, hopefully what is post-pandemic and a more understanding society.
And Carolyn?
You're muted, Carolyn.
happy to report that things are falling into place to get our mother-in-law's house on the market. And believe it or not, it's very hard to find people in during this pandemic time to help you move furniture. So our church has a couple of people that have volunteered to help us move some things out and leave some things in for showing the house, and then later coming back to help us. So it's a lot to coordinate. This is my first time going through selling a house, and so it's been a learning experience for sure.
And David.
I am so happy, and no one get jealous, but Marie and I got her first COVID vaccine shot last Saturday.
Yay.
And Marie.
Oh, David stole my thunder, but I'm very happy and I'm happy that I just didn't spill my entire cup of coffee, because it's the second time I've spilled coffee today. Maybe I need another cup or more sleep, perhaps. Anyway, happy to have that shot. Doris.
Okay. And I'm happy that everybody's quiet in my house, so I didn't have to keep muted too much.
Marissa, I don't know how your employment situation, but this may be new to you. For those that are not retired like David and I, and are still looking for work and are dealing with career transition, you may tap into a new Rotary program called Rotary Works. Rotary.works is the website. You don't need W's in front of it or a .com after it. It's just Rotary.works. And it's a once a month webinar, and the webinar is recorded. So if you can't attend during the time that they are presenting, you can watch it later. And then it is followed up with mentorship, much like Seth talked about. And also there's a opportunity for a small grant. So I encourage you to participate if that would be helpful. And that's it. Oh, Marissa, okay, so this is from the Rotary Club of St. Croix Midtown, so not exactly St. Thomas, but kind of in the general neighborhood. They did a service project called Be a Hero, Wear a Mask. And Rotary is one of our foundational principles is ethics, and we live by the four-way test. And their perspective was, it's fair to all concerned if you wear a mask. And so that's how they're promoting mask wearing in St. Croix. And so, yeah, that's why I have that picture there today.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to getting to know like more information about the organization. And I believe at the next meeting, my friend Kirsa will be calling in. So, you know, we'll have someone else.
Great. And reminder, it's at noon next week.
No problem.
Great. Doris, want to?
I guess it's time to end the way we do with the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do,